Hey guys, it's Monday. So I have made a new video for you. Now this video is going to be a little longer than last week's video because in this video I'm actually going to teach a lesson. So just stick with me. If you need to do it in small pieces, that's fine. There will be a couple of spots where I'll ask you to pause the video and answer a question and then come back and check your answer. Just go with the flow. It's going to be fun. First thing I want to show you is here is your week 2 agenda. Again, this is on Canvas, just like it was last week. You see that you have your vocabulary and your quizzes link. There is an assignment for that. Then here are your required assignments. You're going to do some iReady work this week. Now, some of you have the textbook or the packet or whatever it was that you picked up, and you picked up a book and some other stuff. If you want to do the work on paper, fine. If you want to do the work on Canvas, you can. It is up to you. It doesn't really matter to me how you do it. You do it the way you want to. I'm going to cover the guided practice, pages 153 through 157 today. You can go and download that if you need to, so you can see the pages as we work. It's up to you, whatever you need to do, or have your book handy. I do have mine. And then on Wednesday, you're going to do the independent practice on your own. Now, this is another one. It's going to work the same way. Like I said, if you want to do that work on paper, that's fine. Or if you want to type it, that's fine. It's up to you. And then over here on the right-hand side, you have the Your Choice assignments. You're going to pick 2 of the following. So you're going to pass one iReady lesson. Again, you're in the My Path section. I didn't assign a specific lesson this week. We're just going to work through what the computer is giving you, and you can get some extra practice in on a lot of different subjects that way. And then you're going to choose one of these Common Lit assignments, or if you want to do both the Common Lit assignments, you can. The first one is a nonfiction, Animals' Role in Human Disease. Science, disease related, very timely. If you've been watching the news, you understand what I'm saying. And then the second one, for those of you who miss Greek mythology, here is a Greek myth that I was going to cover, but that we kind of ran out of time before I could get to, and that is the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. This is the story of the labyrinth. Some of you may know this story. Great. If you do, if you don't, and you want to read some more mythology, there you go. Okay, again, all of this is on Canvas. Anything you need is there. If you can't find what you need, you let me know. I will find it for you. But you should have everything that you need. So let's get started. The assignments to this week are on analogies and allusions. So I put some vocabulary together that you kind of needed to know before I started the lesson. Now, some of this stuff you already know, like tone. We have already done tone. You know that tone is the author's attitude towards a subject in a text. This is about them. The tone is about the author. Tone is not necessarily about you. Tone is what has an effect on you as the reader. Now, we've been through that before, so that one I know you know. Analogies, those are extended comparisons between two unlike things. Before you go, Miss Seals, that is not an analogy, that's a metaphor or a simile. Okay, here's the thing. Yeah, I know. Analogies contain similes and metaphors. So think of similes and metaphors as the smaller pieces and the analogy as the big piece, okay? The small pieces come together to make the big picture. The analogy is the big picture, the similes and the metaphors are the small pieces, okay? Don't get confused. We still need to know what similes and metaphors are. We're not forgetting those. We're just going to maybe push out into the bigger picture now. And then we have allusion. Allusion with an A. Allusion. This is a reference to a well-known story, person, piece of art, song, poem, whatever in a text. The thing with allusions is that it's a piece of art of some type that is outside the text you're reading. It's like if you like, let's see, on the Marvel movies or any movie like series. You know how sometimes they'll have Easter eggs where you're like, oh, that's an inside joke. If you know what that's about, oh, you know the thing. That's kind of what illusions are. When we get to the section about illusions, I think you'll be able to see what I mean a little better with the examples that I have. But just think of illusions as Easter eggs. When you're watching those movies or you're watching those shows or you're reading the books or whatever you happen to be doing, when you, as a person who understands what's going on in that story, can go, oh, I know what that is. But someone who's not familiar with it would be like, what? That's an illusion. That author is alluding to something that has happened outside of the current text that you're looking at. Here's your I can statement. After this lesson, you're going to be able to analyze the impact of specific word choices, including the use of analogies and allusions, on the meaning and tone of the text. Why do you need to know this? It's going to help you visualize scenes within a text. Allusions and analogies make description clearer. So that's why they were really important. Again, we're going to be determining tone, so you can determine an author / speaker depending on if we're talking about writing like plain fiction versus a poem. We've been through that. Feelings about a subject. And it's going to help you analyze poetry in a meaningful way. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this is one of the harder things about poetry, especially with illusions. When you can do this stuff, you're able to talk about poetry in a more meaningful way, in a way that is elevated. So this is going to elevate your ability to talk about poetry. Now, before we get into this, yeah, there is some fiction writing in this section, and there is also a poem in this section. So we're going to be using all of your skills. It's okay if maybe you run into something that you don't understand the first time through. If that happens, that's okay. You have your computer and unlimited amounts of time. You can look stuff up. It's not against the rules. I looked stuff up for you for the purposes of this video, but if I didn't get you enough information, go get your own. You know how to do it. Okay, so grab your packet, book, file, whatever you need, and we're going to flip to page 153 in the book. The first section deals with this paragraph here in the white box. So let's read this following paragraph. Julian leans over his potter's wheel, the clay spinning before him like a tiny dancer. He cups it gently with his hands, and the dancer stretches toward the ceiling, becoming a slender column. Now he places delicate fingers on the rim, and the top widens gracefully as it continues its elegant ballet. Oh la la, super fancy. Okay, but let's talk about the tone that this author is using about Julian and his art. You're going to notice that all of our texts this week are going to deal with different types of art. So how does this person who wrote this description of Julian view his work? Is it positive or negative how this person's looking at it? Well, we can look at some specific words. We can look at, well, we have a lot of comparisons, don't we? Yeah, we do. If you're paying attention, maybe you noticed you've got a lot of similes, like a tiny dancer. There's one. You've got a slender column, delicate, elegant, ballet. All of these things are words that are positive. They are sort of saying, ooh, look at this. It's so beautiful. It's so delicate. It's so fragile. Not everyone can do this. That's true. If you know people in Miss Legoff's art classes, talk to them about this. Some of them are actually doing things like this. I can't do it, but they can. They're talented in that way. So I would say that this tone is pretty positive. We can look at the comparisons. Now, take the first one. Clay, a tiny dancer. Mm. I'm trying not to sing the Elton John song because it's one of my favorites. If you don't know what it is, go look it up later. Get some culture. But clay, okay, think clay. It's kind of a lump of, doesn't really do much. A tiny dancer, though, hello, that's very, very effective, very delicate, very beautiful. And those things are not similar, really. They are dissimilar things. And that comparison is sort of carried throughout the description. So all of these comparisons kind of come together to make a good example of analogy. I can take this small section and say, okay, here the author makes a lot of different comparisons, making this big long analogy about how this lump of clay becomes this beautiful, delicate thing in the hands of the potter. That's analogy. So we've done tone, we got that. We knew how to do that before. And now we've got analogy. Now, if you're going, I don't understand this, just think comparison. Think comparison. You know what a simile is. You know what a metaphor is. You've done this before. You've done this before a lot. You already know what this is. It's just that we're, again, looking at the bigger picture. I'm looking at a whole paragraph this time instead of just one sentence, instead of just a part of one sentence. I'm going to push out and I'm going to look at the whole thing. I may have multiple comparisons, but they're all kind of working towards the same goal. Like a tiny dancer, this is something small, beautiful, fragile, elegant. A slender column, ooh, look, beautiful, fragile, elegant. And then I have the word elegant and ballet. Oh, look, I'm going back to the dancer thing again. So it comes back. It all goes together. It all works together to make one big description. Okay? You need to take a minute and let that sink in. You can pause here, think about it for a minute. When your brain feels ready, come back. All right, let's start illusion. Illusions are really fun, if you know what I'm talking about. Here's a cartoon from the book. You have these two characters. One of them has clearly painted a picture of her friend. Take a look at that picture. How much does it look like her friend? I don't know. But the artist thinks that she's done something great. She says, this will be my masterpiece, my Mona Lisa. I bet before I even tell you anything, you're like, oh, Mona Lisa, I know what that is. You probably do. But the girl who sat for the portrait says to herself, I look more like the Bride of Frankenstein. Now, you might look at that picture and go, I don't get it. Who? Well, that's an illusion. Actually, both of the things that are said here in the cartoon are illusions. We're alluding to outside pieces of art within another text. We'll take this cartoon as our text. Okay. It's great if I know what these are, but if I don't, I'm going to struggle. Illusions can be really difficult if you don't recognize the story, the person, the whatever. Guys, this is one of the reasons why we tell you it is so important to read, 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 read. And it's not just reading either, but hey, like I said a minute ago, that Elton John song, Go Get You Some Culture, listen, the more you experience of the world, the more you kind of push your boundaries and watch different movies, watch different TV shows, read different books, read different articles, go looking into things that interest you, try new things. The more you will learn and the better you will be at stuff like this. And before you go, I don't have to be good at illusions. Here's the thing. Illusions are way more common in real life than you may have realized. If you know people who quote TV shows or movies a lot, that is a real life example of illusion. And if you don't know what that came from, then you might miss the joke and everybody else is laughing and you're sitting there going, I don't get it. Well, then you're the person who didn't get the joke. You don't want to be that person. So the more you learn, the more you experience, the more you're going to know. Okay, so this is why we tell you it is so important. It is so important. Read, push your boundaries, learn new things. Um, okay, so back to what we were talking about. I know that you guys probably knew what the Mona Lisa was right then, because you've seen this portrait 1,000 times in your life. This is her on the left, the Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, she's kind of weird looking. She's got no eyebrows. Turns out, though, I hear or I saw, where did I see this? I forget. But the original Mona Lisa, the one you're looking at, it may have been, damaged by time or people trying to restore it. Anyway, what I'm getting at is Mona Lisa probably originally did have eyebrows. And I feel better about that than I do about her not having them. It's just always bothered me that she didn't have them, but that's not important. So you knew who Mona Lisa was, or what the Mona Lisa was, but Bride of Frankenstein, you might have went, I know what Frankenstein is. Well, here on the right, this black and white picture, here is a picture of Elsa Lanchester playing the Bride of Frankenstein in 1935. That's Boris Karloff next to her playing the monster. For future reference, you're welcome in advance. The monster's name is not Frankenstein. The doctor, the scientist, the Looney Tune that created the monster, his name is Frankenstein. The monster is the monster. It got confusing there around the 1930s when they were making all these monster movies. People were like, ooh, Frankenstein, that's the monster. No, it's not. So just, let's get that taken care of. But if you look at the bride, you can see why that girl may have compared the portrait her friend painted of her to the Bride of Frankenstein. I can definitely see, like, in the highlights of the hair, it looks like she's given her a lot of white highlights right there at the face, and also that sort of bug-eyed, vacant stare. Well, that's one of the choices that they made for this character in the movie. You can see those white highlights coming up from the temple. It's supposed to sort of put in your mind the electricity that was used to animate both the bride and the monster. You can also see that sort of blank stare on her face. You got to understand that the bride has just been created. She doesn't know anything about the world, just like the monster didn't know anything about the world when he was created in his movie back in 1931. And I know you're not here for movie stuff, but let me just tell you, Universal made a ton of money off the monster movies in the 30s. This was probably the best one, The Bride of Frankenstein. So around Halloween, watch out for, like, on Turner Classic Movies. They'll put The Bride on at least once during October. Watch it. It's a really good movie. And before you say, oh, Miss Steele, it's in black and white. Culture, people. Black and white movies are still good. So when you look at this picture of the Bride of Frankenstein, you immediately go, oh, I get it now. That was not a positive opinion that that girl had of the portrait that her friend had painted for her. When she says, I look like the Bride of Frankenstein, she's being a little more descriptive than she was normally going to be if she was just saying, I look weird. I look weird can be interpreted 1,000 different ways. I look like the Bride of Frankenstein. We immediately have a picture in our head and we go, oh no. Oh honey, no. Because that's not a good look for anybody. Although, truthfully, it was kind of glamorous. I'm just going to say that. But that's how illusion can really help us. It can really help us visualize what's going on in a text and help us, like I said, be in on the joke. All right, I'm going to have you pause the video here. On page 154, we've got 2 paragraphs. They're part of a longer text. You know how this works. We're going to read these 2 paragraphs, and we're going to keep in mind that we want to answer this question. How does the use of analogy and allusion impact the meaning and tone of the story? The story is titled An Artist at Work, and it describes an artist whose name is Kang. I don't know. Kang, who is painting in front of, say, like an audience. People are observing him work, which is a big deal. You know, people like to see, well, how is art made? They want to know, where did you get your ideas and stuff like that. So that's what this story is kind of focusing on. It is a piece of fiction. Kang is not a real artist, but it's a realistic piece of fiction. Okay, so pause the video, read those 2 paragraphs. Come back when you're done. Okay, hopefully you have read those paragraphs. If you haven't, why are you trying to not read the paragraph? Just go read them. It'll take you 5 minutes. All right, so they give us this chart. We're looking at the words that are used, the impact of those words on the meaning within the text, and the impact on the tone that this author is approaching those subjects with. Okay. We have an analogy made and an allusion made. Take a minute and think. What kind of extended comparison was made in this piece of fiction? If you're looking at the first paragraph and you're saying, oh, well, the paintbrush, the brush strokes are kind of compared to a swallow, a bird. It moves very gracefully, flitting, it says, swiftly, swoops. Yeah, that's it. Your analogy here is about the brush strokes and the paintbrush being compared to a bird. Now that should immediately make you go, ooh, bird, bird. Word association. Birds are delicate, beautiful, swift, fast, just perfectly just what they should be. That's exactly what we're doing. So the brush swoops like a swallow, flitting, gliding. These are some great words to describe what this guy is doing with his painting. They filled in the next box for us. What's the impact on meaning? Creates an image of the brush moving like a bird in flight. That's where your brain immediately goes when I say, oh, it's compared to a bird. Your brain went there already. Even if you hadn't read that box, which I know you probably did, even if you hadn't read that box, you would still be thinking that. The author intentionally compared the brush to the bird because that's where they want your brain to go. So what's the impact on tone? Well, stop and think. Is it positive or negative to compare that brush and the brush strokes to a bird? I think it's positive because it's saying that it's very delicate. Again, beautiful. Art is supposed to be delicate and beautiful and gorgeous and perfect, and all of these things are coming together right here in the tone box. It's at the tone of grace, delicacy, beauty. You can imagine what it looks like. This is not take a paintbrush and go throw the paint on the thing. It's paint here, perfect little stripes. Put it where it needs to go. My painting would look like the first one. A person with talent would look like the second one. There we go. All right, now back up. Let's talk about the illusion here. Okay, maybe you caught it, maybe you didn't. Maybe you know what it's talking about, maybe you don't. But this time I did give you a footnote to help you, which is great. If you look at the bottom of that blue box where the paragraphs are, it made reference to the works of Picasso and Pollock. In fact, the people who are observing Kang work, they say, the best works of Picasso and Pollock hardly compare. This is a bold statement. We'll get there in a second. But Pablo Picasso and Jackson Pollock are 2 famous 20th century painters. They both had very unique styles, which I'm going to show you in just a second, just to kind of help you go, oh, okay, I see what they're saying. But they allude to the works of Picasso and Pollock, saying that Kang's work is like their work. Again, bold statement. But what kind of impact does that have on meaning? Well, I can fill that box in if I take the word choice and I also think about the tone. The tone, it says an admiring, respectful tone. Basically, if you paint as well as Pollock and Picasso, you got a little something called talent, and these people are saying that about Kang. So, what meaning is being created here or implied here? It's sort of referring to these famous artists who are known for their styles of painting and saying that this guy, Kang, whoever he is, has this sort of talent going on. So, I could just say, "Ooh, he's a great painter." I don't I don't get any specific information from that. He's a great painter. Okay, what kind? Is he like Da Vinci? Is he painting portraits? No. Okay. But if I say Picasso and Pollock, my brain immediately goes, oh, he's one of them weird painters. Hold up. Here, just for your edification, your education, here's some culture for you. Here are examples of Picasso's work and Pollock's work. Now, Picasso, he starts out actually with more traditional looking portraits, not Mona Lisa level necessarily, but something sort of like that. But this picture on the left, the black and white one, is Guernica. It is his most famous work, and it depicts the aerial bombing of a Spanish city during World War I. You can see that he does a lot of stuff with shapes. It gets a little weird. This style of art is called Cubism, and some of his other works are really hard to look at sometimes because he's the artist. Maybe you've seen some of his paintings where the painting is of a person, but their nose is where their forehead should be and their eye is where their mouth should be, and it's sometimes a little confusing. We're like, "Oh, what's going on there?" That was just his style. So that one's interesting. And then you come over here on the right. This is Jackson Pollock's work, Convergence. If you're going, it just looks like there's a lot of paint thrown on the canvas. Well, you're right. That's how Jackson Pollock painted. That was his thing. Now, actually, in the independent practice that you're going to do in this chapter, you're going to read more about Jackson Pollock. So I'm not going to go crazy into that, but if you want to look him up later, you sure can. Convergence, it says, is supposed to represent free speech and free thought during the times of the Cold War and the Red Scare. History people, you know what I'm talking about. People who aren't history people, here we go. The Cold War followed World War II. It was where kind of America and what is now Russia, but was then called the USSR, were kind of not openly at war, but trying to outdo each other, which is where you had the space race. And the Red Scare was where in America, people got really worried about people being communist and working to take down the ideas of democracy in our country. Now, you can do with that information what you will, but a lot of people during the Red Scare, they were, if you were at all politically inclined, motivated, if you were doing stuff, speaking out, you're kind of like, we don't like that. Jackson Pollock, because his art was abstract, it doesn't take like a real form, didn't really make people nervous. But it was about free speech. It was about free thought. I am not an art teacher. I'm going to leave this to Miss Love. But those are the ideas that were happening in their art. So here's what their art looked like. This is what we're comparing Kang's artwork to. Now you may go, why is that so impressive? That's okay. Maybe it's not your favorite kind of art. It's not mine. But we are comparing it to these two very famous artists. And now you've got a visualization of something to go with the story that you have over here about what Kang was painting. I know that there's some tree branches, apparently. The image of a tree begins to take shape, is what it says in the story. So maybe it's not a traditional, quotes, painting of a tree. Maybe it's kind of an abstract, crazy painting of a tree. But the point is, these people who are observing him are like, oh, wow, he can paint like these guys. These guys were the best. Yes. So that kind of helps you visualize what the painting would actually look like. All right, if you can take a break, I understand. I just talked a lot for a long time. Just take a deep breath. All right, let's move on. We're going to continue reading about him on page 155. There's a couple of paragraphs left, and you're going to answer the following question. What is the purpose of the author's use of analogy on this page? Okay. You can pause the video and read here, and then come back. All right, now that you're back, I want to draw your attention to a sentence on the second line of the first paragraph. The swallow is now a tiger. Ooh, very different. Very different things. Swallow, small, delicate, tiger, big, strong, scary. We're more like my style of painting where you just take the brush and you throw the paint everywhere. So now the analogies have changed. Now the comparisons have changed. And you have lines like the tiger swipes. That's less delicate. That has changed the meaning of what's going on here. So let's look at your options. What is the purpose of the author's use of analogy on this page? It describes a change in the artist's blending of colors and shapes. It describes a change in the artist's perspective as he paints. It describes a change to a lighter, more delicate brushstroke. I know it's not that one, so we'll throw C out immediately. Or it describes a change to a stronger, more powerful painting style. All right, we threw C out because we know that's not it. Describes a change in the artist's blending of colors and shapes. I don't know that it's really necessarily talking about blending here. It's talking about short, quick strokes, not the blending that I would want to be doing. When you're painting and you want to blend, it's like a slow process. So, okay, I don't know if I want to call it that. A change in the artist's perspective. This would suggest that first he was painting from the perspective of the swallow and now he is a tiger. I don't think that works. So what I'm left with is D. Describes a change to a stronger, more powerful painting style. We started with delicate strokes. Now we're doing swipes. Big difference. Okay? All right. We're going to move on to the next section. The next section is guided practice. Now, you know how this one works. This is on page 156. You know that you have 2 questions on the front, and then there are 3 questions on the back. We're going to do all of those questions. I'll read the poem to you. Now, this is a different kind of poem. This one is spoken word. A lot of the poems we have done up until now have been more traditional poetry. This one is not going to follow a lot of those rules. It's a poem that's more naturally spoken. It's going to sound more like talking than about poetry. Also, this poem is full of analogies and allusions, so be watching for it. Once we read the poem, you're going to pause the video and you're going to answer the questions on 156 on the left-hand side, the 2 close reading questions. One says underline, one says draw boxes, and then you're going to do the multiple choice questions on 157. Then we're going to press play so you can see how you did. So you'll do 4 questions, you'll play the video, and then we will do the questions together and you can check your work. We will do the last question, which is a writing response. We'll kind of do that one together because it's going to be one of those things where you have to explain and you may not know how to explain just yet, but that's okay. We'll work together on this one so you can do it when it's time to do it on your own. I do not want to do that. Go away. All right, so I am on 156 and the title of this poem is Any fool can get into an ocean. Here we go. Any fool can get into an ocean, but it takes a goddess to get out of one. What's true of oceans is true, of course, of labyrinths and poems. When you start swimming through riptide of rhythms and metaphor seaweed, you need to be a good swimmer or a born goddess to get back out of them. Look at the sea otters bobbing wildly out in the middle of the poem. They look so eager and peaceful playing out there where the water hardly moves. You might get out through all the waves and rocks into the middle of the poem to touch them, but when you've tried the blessed water long enough to want to start backward, that's when the fun starts. Unless you're a poet or an otter or something supernatural, you'll drown, dear. You'll drown. Any Greek can get you into a labyrinth, but it takes a hero to get out of one. What's true of labyrinths is true, of course, of love and memory when you start remembering. Okay, now you can see that you've got some footnotes here. You're big kids, you can read the footnotes by yourself. Read those footnotes, pause the video here, answer those 4 questions, and then come back. Okay, you should be back now. Here we go. Question 1. What allusions does the speaker make? At what point in the poem does each one become clear? Underline clues that help you understand which mythical stories are named. Hey, there's a big hint. Use the footnotes for guidance. All right, excuse me. On the footnotes that you read, one of them, a born goddess, refers to the goddess Aphrodite. We talked about her before. You remember this? It was said that she was born from the foam on the waves of the sea. Like she came out of the sea fully formed. Okay. And then the second footnote for labyrinth, that's a complex maze. In the Greek myth of Theseus, he has to go into and get out of the labyrinth at Crete, and he has to fight the Minotaur. Hey, this is one of your choice assignments. So if you want to read the story, go read it. You got it. It's right there on Canvas. So that will give you some hints about what's going on. I put up the first 8 lines of the poem so we could talk about illusion. Let me turn on my pointer because I love this thing. Okay. So first, I might go down here. Here's my a born goddess. That's Aphrodite. So there's an illusion right there. There's not necessarily one story to read about the birth of Aphrodite. It's just kind of in the general knowledge of Greek mythology, but it is still an allusion to Greek mythology. And I'm going to be really honest. The first time I read the poem, when I was getting ready to do this video for you, I looked at lines 1 through 3 and I went, oh, the Odyssey. And if you're going, the what? The Odyssey is one of Homer's poems, epic poems. We talked about Homer, remember, the blind poet who memorized the stories and would travel through Greece telling them. The Odyssey is about a guy named Odysseus, and I talked about him. You know, he offended Poseidon when he did not give him credit for helping Odysseus and his army win the war at Troy. And so Poseidon was like, oh, you think you're going to go home on my oceans? No, 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 you're not. You will travel and travel and travel, but you will never get home. And one of the main helpers that Odysseus has in that story is a goddess. Anybody remember what his goddess's name was? The one who liked him and was like, oh, I'll help you. It was Athena. Athena is one of the forces, not the only force, but one of the forces that helps Odysseus eventually get home. So, I don't know if that was intended or not, but my brain immediately went there because that's a story that I'm familiar with. I've taught it before. So I was like, ooh, ocean, goddess, Odyssey. I could be wrong. I don't know. So you would have underlined a born goddess. And maybe on line 19, you've also underlined labyrinth because you kind of got that hint from the footnote. You know that we're talking about the story of Theseus and the Minotaur when you see Labyrinth. Okay, so that's got question 1. Let's go on to question 2. How does the speaker feel about poetry? Because this poem is not about Greek myths, it's about poetry. Does he find it puzzling, calming, or dangerous? Draw a box around clues that help you identify the tone of the poem. Now, if you just want to go, and you can make any of these words stick if you choose to try to read it that way. But the answer here is clear. It's clear. Is poetry puzzling? This doesn't give me a puzzling attitude. Is it calming? I do not see calm in here. But what I'm feeling maybe is a little bit dangerous. Now, maybe I'm feeling the danger a little more because you know how I am about the ocean, because I'm convinced I'm going to die there. But here is a list of words and phrases that will help us identify the speaker's tone. Look at this example. You need to be a good swimmer or a born goddess to get back out of them. Ooh. If you're not a good swimmer, it's dangerous for you to be out in this water. That's when the fun starts. Somehow I feel like that may not be fun. Just saying. Unless you're a poet or an otter or something supernatural, you'll drown, dear. I'm like, okay, I'm not going in the water. Now, before you go, wait a minute, what are we talking about water? We're comparing here. We're doing an analogy. What 2 things, or maybe what 3 things are being compared that are really not alike? I'm comparing poetry to the ocean. How does that work? Well, I'm saying that poetry and the ocean have their dangers. The ocean dangers are clear. Riptides, seaweed, great white sharks. That might also be robots, I don't know. But poetry also has its dangers. If you get too caught up in what it means and this layer and that layer, you're going to be like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. So this author, this speaker is saying, you know, be careful. It's dangerous in poetry, just the way it's dangerous in the ocean. You got to know what you're about. You got to be knowledgeable so that you can be that good swimmer. It takes a hero to get out of one. That suggests a dangerous situation to me. Heroes are good at getting out of danger. People like me, okay, well, people like me are not in the ocean in the first place, but I digress. Heroes are good at getting out of danger. So that suggests danger to me. So the speaker's tone toward poetry is that it is something dangerous, but also exciting. Like an adventure story. Like those myths, the myths of the heroes. Think about when we did Perseus and Medusa. There are parts of that story that are very scary, but also very exciting. That's kind of their view on poetry. It can be scary, but also exciting. All right, let's move on. Let's do question, it's really question 3, but it's the first multiple choice question. Based on the speaker's analogy, how are oceans and poems said to be alike? I kind of gave you the answer to this already. Is it A, both are easy to get into, but their effect is difficult to escape? Both are dangerous, captivating, and playful, all at the same time. Both are filled with monsters you must fight to gain your freedom. No. Both pose many obstacles before you can even reach them. No. So we're between A and B. Any fool, it says at the very beginning, any fool can get into an ocean. This is true. Any fool can get into the ocean. But only good swimmers get back. Both are easy to get into, but their effect is difficult to escape. If you had the right answer, good job. Let's do the next one. What is the purpose of the speaker's allusion to the labyrinth? Okay, the labyrinth is the maze. Let's read. To compare the abilities of a powerful Greek goddess to the heroic deeds of Theseus. No, no comparison there. To suggest that readers can trap themselves inside the many layers of meaning suggested by figurative language. To highlight the puzzling yet stirring message at the heart of the poem. To emphasize that readers can lose themselves in a good poem just as they would in a maze. So I know that A is out. I'm between B, C, and D. I really feel like I might be between B and D. What do you think? Well, the answer here is D, emphasizing that the readers can lose themselves in a poem just as they would in a maze. If you go into a maze, now we don't have a lot of labyrinths laying around up here, but ever done the corn maze around Halloween? You get in that maze, and the further you go, the more lost you get, and it's like, oh no, I'm never gonna get out of here. So that's what's going on here. So D is the right answer. All right, last question. Explain how the speaker's use of analogy and allusion have an impact on the tone of the poem. Use at least 2 details from the poem in your response. Now, we have struggled with this kind of question before. It is an explain question. So one sentence is not going to get it. I'm looking for a paragraph here. A short paragraph, but I'm looking for a paragraph. Explain how the speaker's use of analogy and allusion, I gotta talk about both, have an impact on the tone of the poem. Okay, the tone of the poem, we talked about this, it's that poetry is dangerous but also exciting, like an adventure story. Let me look back at my poem for just a second. What are some things that I picked out? I know that I picked out my allusions about the goddess and the labyrinth. So those are the allusions that I can use. And then I've got boxes drawn around words that help me identify the tone of the poem. I've got all those boxes or all those things that I showed you on that previous slide. If you need to rewind, go back, look at them again. Okay, well, the best way I can answer this question is like this. The speaker uses a warning tone to show readers of poetry that there are many ways to get trapped or confused in a poem. This is my thesis statement. Before you go, why are we talking about thesis statements? Hey, all answers, all paragraphs, have a thesis statement, have a topic sentence. It's fine. I'm now going to prove that this is right. How am I going to do that? Well, it told me, use at least 2 details from the poem. There's my evidence. It's all right there, you guys. All you gotta do is just go get it. That's it. So, they compare poetry to the ocean, which can be a dangerous place with hidden hazards like riptides and seaweed, and great white sharks. This gives the reader a sense of danger. The mention of the labyrinth from the Greek myth suggests a feeling of adventure and excitement. The reader knows the story of Theseus and the Minotaur, knows that it is one of the great heroic myths, and this suggests to them that poetry, while intimidating, can also be fun. That's it. So, for reference, thesis statement, evidence, evidence, evidence. Sum it up. Don't forget these skills, guys. You're going to use them every time you answer a question like this. But there you go. That's it. Now, we'll go ahead and tell you on the independent practice, there is a question just like this. Look at my example. Look at what I gave you right here on this slide. Use that to help you answer the question later. Give me a thesis that talks about the tone. Give me the evidence from the text, however much it tells you to use. Give me a sum up sentence, and that's it. This paragraph has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. Perfect. 1 paragraph. That's all I'm looking for. So here's an example for you. Please use it. All right, that is today's lesson. Now, Wednesdays is on your own. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait and see how many questions I get from Wednesday. And then if I need to like set some stuff straight or help people out on Friday, then I'll put out a new video on Friday to kind of help you do the work from Wednesday. For Wednesday, you're doing pages 158 through 160. I did separate them on Canvas so you can see where they are. That text will deal with Jackson Pollock. So that's the dude with the all the paint on the thing. You can go back in the video and look at his painting. Keep in mind what you learned about him today to help you make sense of what you're going to read. When you complete the work, like I said, you can do it on paper or Canvas. It is up to you. For quizzes, I opened an assignment in Canvas where you can turn in a screenshot on Canvas and you don't have to email it to me because that's a lot of emails and I didn't really want to look at every single one. So now you can just do it on Canvas and I can just flip through. As always, you know how to get in touch with me. You can send me a Canvas message. You can text me through Remind. You can email me directly if you need to. If you have questions or need help, let me know. My office hours this week are the same as last week. Monday from 9 till 10:30 in the morning. Wednesday from 9 till 10:30 in the morning. And then Friday from around 9 and maybe a little longer than 10:30 this time. And I know last week I told you I was going to give you a fun video, and then on Friday my internet was messed up and I could not get anything to work. So this week, I promise a fun video for Friday. If I have to do 2, I will do 2. But I promise I will make it happen. Okay? All right. Again, if you need help, you know how to get a hold of me. Don't worry about it. Just text me. Just email me. I am here to help you. Hope everything's going really well. I hope that you're not too bored. Again, if you're bored, go read a book. I put 4 on Canvas for you. Maybe you'll find one that you like. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Bye.